Robert.
Okay, so it's evolving with the cosmos. Can you hear me?
Yes, and that's the theme for the year. And so that would be the reading on the back cover. Thank you so much.
The cosmos is full beyond measure of elegant truths, of exquisite interrelationships, of the awesome machinery of nature. The surface of the earth is the shore of the cosmic ocean. On this shore, we've learned most of what we know. Recently, we've waded a little way out, maybe ankle deep, and the water seems inviting. Some part of our being knows this is where we came from. We long to return, and we can, because the cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Carl Sagan.
Thank you ever so much, Robert. Welcome, everyone, to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions that sometimes comes out in a different version, which it is today, Gems from the Movement Traditions. And today our topic lends itself very well to coming from one of the movement traditions. The topic here at Still and Moving Center in our almanac is the ocean, Ka Moana. And thinking about this topic for me brought to mind the many, many conversations that my husband Cliff and I have had about the ocean with all of his direct experiences upon it, either within a boat or, in the case we're going to talk about now, an outrigger paddling canoe. And his experiences go back probably into about 2003, 2004, early on when he and I moved here to Hawaii. He undertook, he was really inspired by a paddler named Nappy Napoleon, about whom you could watch a 30-minute movie that we sent you in the invitation called I Just Love to Paddle. Cliff helped to organize with him and several other Hawaiian watermen a 9-channel crossing of the 9 major channels between the Hawaiian Islands, which they did in 6 or 7 days. It was quite a feat. And he has, studied under, paddled with some of the foremost paddlers in the islands. And he has had some pretty remarkable experiences as someone who has also studied philosophy and in many formats, including from the context of theosophy, which has a book called The Ocean of Theosophy, talking about wisdom as something that we can approach as a child, just at that shore level. And then we can go deeper and deeper until the depths are so profound we cannot fathom them. So he has an appreciation of the ocean philosophically that he has combined, I think, with his actual life experience that will, I think, give us a great starting point for our group conversation. So, Cliff, I hand it over to you now.
Okay, well, thanks, Renee, for that intro. And yeah, Renee asked me to give this little presentation on the ocean in regards to canoe paddling, and it was kind of hard to resist because I really enjoy that activity so much. So I'm hoping I'll be able to share some of that enthusiasm for paddling with you, and hopefully it's just a fun hour in terms of talking about what we can gain from from that particular activity. I thought maybe we'd start, as Renee wants this to be kind of a moving meditation kind of thing, in terms of movement, in terms of the practice of paddling itself. And then from there, I'll just kind of share some of my philosophic ponderings about paddling and its relationship to the ocean and the experience through paddling, the experience of the ocean. So if anybody has like a broom close by, that could be a that could be a paddle for you. I have a broom right here. If you could grab a broom, that would be good, but you can also have a virtual paddle. That's just as good. A virtual paddle is just as good. So I'm going to try and teach you how to do an outrigger canoe paddling stroke with the paddle. But paddling, I just might start by saying that paddling outrigger canoes is something very much a part of Hawaiian culture. I mean, the Hawaiians came to Hawaii and became called Hawaiians from other places in Polynesia on really large double-hulled voyaging canoes. So paddling has been a part of Hawaiian culture from the very beginning, along with hula. And of course, Robert knows that surfing was started too here in Hawaii. The Hawaiians, they enjoyed life and had a lot of and did a lot of fun things here in Hawaii. I was going to point out that when they came to Hawaii, they saw there was two kinds of lava that they saw. There was more of a solid kind of lava, and then this other kind of lava that was more liquid. And they called that lava pohoihoi, which means paddle, paddle. And the reason they called it that is because that liquid lava has swirls in it. And you can see this especially on the Big Island. So when you do paddle a canoe, you create these little eddies in the water. And so from all that experience of paddling, they saw that same image in the lava, and so they named it after paddling, this actually kind of lava. So I see Jade has got her paddle. Anyone else? Renee's got one. So, oh, there you go, Deshane. That's perfect. That's perfect. So one of the things about paddling that's really cool is that, and the reason I like it so much better, I don't know, aesthetically than like kayak paddling is because you paddle on one side and then you paddle on the other side. And while you're paddling on the other side, the side that you just paddled on is kind of resting and it can recover a little bit. It's kind of like the whales and the birds that migrate all the way from up in toward Alaska to Hawaii every year, and they do it nonstop. And the big question was, how can they do that? How can they travel all those miles nonstop? And scientists figured out that both the whales and the birds would be able to only use half of their brain at a time while the other half of their brain is resting. So in outrigger canoe paddling, it's kind of like half your body, the left side is resting while the right side is paddling. So basically, this is my paddle, my broom here. So basically, let's say we're going to start paddling on the left side. So your left hand would be toward the bottom of the paddle, and your top hand would be at the top. Okay, I'm going to switch to a real paddle, but just because it's easier for me. But you guys just pretend if you don't have one, or use your broom. So this is a real paddle. It has a T-top on it. So I'll back up a little bit. So what we do, you don't move your body forward. You rotate your body. You will rotate your body. So what you do to get the stroke in is you take the blade and you put it out as far as you can in front of you, and then you plant it in the water, and your top hand is over your bottom hand, which is called along the gunnel of the canoe. And then from your rotation, you use your big muscles in your back and your glutes and your lats to do the stroke along the paddle, along the canoe. You don't want to paddle with the paddle facing at an angle. You want to paddle straight along the edge of the canoe. Otherwise, you get a weak stroke and it cavitates and so forth. So the top hand, if you had a baseball hat on, your top hand would be touching the top of your baseball hat. and then you take your stroke, and it's called driving. As you bring it around the canoe, you drive through, and then you float the paddle back. So you turn your broom sideways and you feather it. You feather the paddle back, extend by rotating, not by bending, but rotating. You plant, drive, and then recover. Plant, drive, recover. And you do this about 10 or 15 times on one side. And then what you do is you switch to the other side. And the way you do this is you kind of turn the paddle, you put your top hand underneath your bottom hand, and then you slide your top hand over. So now we're going to paddle on the right side. So plant, drive, recover. Plant, drive, recover. Plant, drive, recover. Now, in canoeing, there's two kinds, really. There's a six-man canoe and the one-man canoe. And in the six-man canoe, in order for all six members to paddle in rhythm, in harmony, in perfect synchronicity with one another, you have to switch at the same time. So seat number 2 is the guy that keeps the rhythm of the paddling. Seat number 1 is the one that kind of keeps the tempo, but seat number 2 keeps the rhythm of, and what he does is he calls the huts. And by calling the huts, that means you take one more stroke and then you switch to the other side. Now, seat 3, 4, and 5, they're called the engine room of the six-man canoe. And seat number 6 is the steersman. He uses his blade primarily as a rudder to steer the canoe. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to paddle, say, about 8 strokes on the left, and then I'm going to call a hut. And that means you're going to take one more stroke, and then we're going to come over onto the other side, and we'll paddle 8 strokes. So get your canoe paddle in position, reaching by rotating. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hut. One more, 7, and over. And then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, hut. One more stroke, come over to the other side. There you go. That's the basics of paddling. That's the basics of it. And so it seems like a very repetitive activity, and it is. It is a very repetitive activity. So you might think, well, this is kind of boring to be doing this same thing over and over and over again. And I've done it, I don't know, thousands and thousands of times. But when you really think about it, there's a lot in life that is repetitive. Breathing is repetitive, and we don't find that boring. Our hearts beating regularly is extremely repetitive, but it's not boring either. And there's something about doing an activity like this over and over and over again that actually allows it to become kind of meditative, so that it kind of, especially when you're out on the water, it kind of stills the mind. Just like maybe running and breathing, just getting that wonderful rhythm going is a very, I think, a very therapeutic activity, because it has a way of stilling the mind. So there is a quote that came with the invitation to this thing from a guy named Gerard Tieva, and he was the coach for this really good team that came from Tahiti, and they've dominated the big canoe race that goes from Molokai to Oahu every year, called the Molokai Hoi. I think they've won it 14 times. They hold the record for it. And I got to watch these paddlers and actually escort them once. And one of the things that Gerard said that has always stuck with me is that he doesn't want the paddlers to tap into their own energy when they paddle. He wants them to tap into the energy of the ocean and let the energy of the ocean come through them and let that energy be what is driving the paddle, not so much the individual paddlers. And the way he describes this is he says, and the way you do it in a 6-man canoe, a little more than in a 1-man, is you have, if when you're paddling, the side that you're on, you're also that front the foot on the, say on the left side in this case, is also forward. So you kind of drive off of that foot. And what Gerard is saying is he wants you to feel through the canoe to the ocean and tap into that energy of the ocean and let that come through one's body. And then at the moment of planting the paddle, like we just did, that energy that has come out of the ocean explodes back into the ocean. It's kind of like the paddler is like a filament in a light bulb. That's all the paddler is. And all the energy is impersonal, outside of oneself. And the Tahitians, you can see how in tune they are with one another and with the ocean, that they can do all these subtle little adjustments by feeling the ocean, when to put more pressure on the blade, when to rest. You're still paddling, but you're changing your tempo, or you're changing the power of the drive. And then when you need to pick it up to stay with the ocean. They have an incredible united sense of how to work with the ocean. And one of my favorite sayings has been, as a paddler, is kind of silly maybe, is the faster you go, the faster you go. And why I say that to myself is, the faster you go, the more the ocean helps you. The more the ocean is contributing and supporting and making you go even faster. The slower you go, and this is in an ocean where the water is moving. The slower you go, the more it's a slog. But the faster you go, all of a sudden you feel like the ocean is lifting you and taking you with it, which is incredibly fun and exciting. So in Hawaii, they speak about this energy as mana. That's the Hawaiian term for energy. And the Hawaiians also feel that that there's a lot of mana in the human being, in the bone structure of a human being. And so they named the channel where a lot of these canoe races are, which is between Molokai and Oahu, as the Kaiwi channel, the channel of the bones, not because necessarily it's a scary channel. It is kind of, but mainly because the bones have this energy, and that the channel between Molokai and Oahu has a lot of mana, a lot of energy in it. And of course, Jade, you and Deshawn, I think that this idea of mana is very much connected with the idea of chi in qigong, right? We're talking about kind of the same kind of thing. So for me, switching from more how to paddle or what are the practice of paddling into the kind of my philosophical ponderings about while I paddle is, for me, paddling, especially because we live right here on this bay in Hawaii called Kaneohe Bay, and I go out in the evenings when the sun is going down, and it's just an amazing place out here. Paddling has kind of become a portal into a world of wonderment, a world of mystery, and a magical world. Usually when I get home, Renee will come out, bring a drink to me, and she'll say, well, did you see any creatures today? What did you see out there? And I'll say, yeah, I saw turtles, or I saw a shark, or a dolphins or something. I'll say something like that. But the thing that I don't really talk about too much with her is my main experience is, or my main thing that I reflect on is the sun and the ocean, and the connection between the sun and the ocean. Because really, when you think about it, the sun is 2/3 hydrogen and water is 2/3 hydrogen, basically. So it's almost like the water or the ocean is like liquid sunlight. So that's I love to think about that when I'm out on the water, I'm traveling on, packages or packets of liquid sunlight. And that is full of this mana, this full of this energy. And basically, when you think of Einstein's theory of or his formula, E equals mc squared, he's actually saying that energy and mass are convertible. Mass contains energy and can be converted to energy, and likewise, energy can turn into matter. So it's really intriguing to me um, to really think about what is the nature of energy in our world, in ourselves, in the universe, and especially in this case, in the ocean. There's this one word in theosophy that's a very, very mysterious word. I think, Robert and Renee and I and Carolyn, who have been involved in theosophy, we've pondered on this word a lot. It's a very mysterious word from Tibet, ancient word. It's called Fohat. And this word Fohat means kind of like the energy in and behind the entire universe. And there's this one woman, philosopher and activist in France. Her name was Simone Weil, and she said that there's two forces in the whole universe. There is light and there is gravity. There's these two forces. In other words, they are two kinds of energy, and that's it. And somehow I think these two kinds of energy are connected to Fohat, because Fohat, it says, is that energy that connects spirit and matter, that connects consciousness and form. So I was thinking about that as I was paddling the other night. Last night, I think I went, no, the night before last. I went golfing yesterday, but the night before that, as I was paddling, I was thinking, what is this? How can light and um, gravity be two sides of the same energy? And I thought maybe light is the spiritual side of energy, and gravity is more like the material emphasis of energy, but it's still one energy. There's this energy throughout. So, anyways, those are some of my ponderings as I was paddling. Um, but I think what paddling is to me, as hula is to Mary and Malia and Renee, who takes hula, and others, as well as Qigong is probably to Jade and Deshawn, as well as surfing is to Robert, is a way to get, and also David Sanders, I don't see him, but I know he's there. Yoga is to David Sanders, is a way for us to get closer to nature, or to unify or harmonize or unify ourselves with nature. That's the wonderful experience that one can have through these activities that are done in nature, or replicate movements in nature, because a lot of hula has to do with symbolizing various aspects of nature, right, Renee? And so I think that's, for me, what paddling is. The coolest thing about it is it's this doorway or this gateway or this portal into an experience of being participant with and united with nature. And so those are the thoughts I wanted to share.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you so much for taking us through that physical experience ourselves. It's fun to, touch into that, actually, the shape of the movement that you are making. One of the things that has fascinated me in your many descriptions of paddling experiences was your telling me about your Hawaiian coach, Kamoa Kalama, and what he could sense through his paddle.
Well, one thing he could sense out there, which was remarkable to me, was when there's other creatures close by, whales or dolphins or sea turtles and stuff. He just knew they were there. But yeah, I think the connection that he had with the ocean was just amazing, as well as Nappy Napoleon. Traveling all the channels with him, and I basically paddle right next to him. He'd already crossed the Molokai Hoy 50 times. It's a very strenuous race, and he had done it 50 times in a row. And I think now he's done it like well over 60, probably 60 times in a row as a steersman. At first, he was more like a stroker in seat number one, but now he's kind of graduated to the steersman seat, but he's still doing it. And he's what, late 80s? But steersman doesn't require as much power. It requires more finesse, more skill. So he can sit in seat 6 and steer that canoe really, really well. But his attunement to the ocean and all the things, those that navigated were able to read, their course through the stars, but also the feel of the ocean. And they can feel like the reflection of water coming off of a landmass way before you can see the landmass. And Nappy paddling next to him, it was really kind of experience and how he was able to just pick up all this nuance with the water, the feel of the water and so forth. And my coach too, Coach Kalama, uh, yeah, Kamoa, he was like that too. And you probably know this too, Robert, people that have an incredibly tight, intuitive sense of in surfing and the waves and so forth. It's kind of that same thing that through all this deep experience, they really do become one with the ocean. And Nappy is eternally youthful because of it, I think so.
Um, so we'd love to hear other people's thoughts about the ocean and maybe in connection through some other movement format, or you may have your own way of connecting with the ocean that has given you some insight about something that covers, we hear, something like 3/4 of the earth, and which has something of a similar constitution as the blood that runs in our veins.
Carolyn has the ocean behind her and she's got her finger up.
Let's go to Carolyn.
Well, it's not the same, but it is the same. Listening to Cliff's experiences, mine were on the Atlantic Ocean, and with competitive racing and all. And some days we were taking
On a sailing ship, right? Or a sailboat?
Yeah, a small sailboat, I'd say 11, 12 feet long, and you're on your knees up near the bow, and the wind is blowing, and you're just kind of speeding through the water, the waves with the wind. And if you have to crawl up front to fix something that might have come a little bit loose, it's it's quite exciting. And and you really do feel that you're a little but conscious entity in this huge ocean. We're talking about being way out in the ocean by the lighthouse, and you're going very fast, but you feel the energy. You feel that you're just you are part of nature. There's no doubt about that. So I used to have those experiences, and it, as I say, it was quite exciting. And you're speeding along, and you're just this one person on a little boat, going very fast, in a very vast expanse of water. No doubt about that.
Mm. And it's interesting what you're saying, Carolyn, that though you were tiny, you were conscious.
Yes.
So there was part of that kind of observer viewpoint,
Yeah.
witness viewpoint that you had of the whole thing. How
And there
fascinating.
were other boats out there somewhere, and there was a motorboat with the guy that was kind of responsible for making sure we didn't disappear. Um, but it was very exciting when you're only 10 years old, 11 years old. And you really do, just you're one with the ocean, but yet you're not. You have to keep a kind of momentum going. And so I'm glad I had those experiences. It certainly helps break attachments to anything singular or anything definite, or to assume that you must keep control, but you don't, that's not what you focus on, but you must keep control, even though it's almost ludicrous to think you can keep control in this vast expanse of um, an ocean. You keep with all its potency. And there are a lot of other experiences like being hit and your boat starts to sink, um, and all of that, and you have to figure out how to not sink until somebody, and actually kind of interesting in that, just historically, um, the service boat came over and flipped us around, so we were hauled into harbor with the hole in the back, so we didn't just sink into the ocean. Um, and when we were hit actually by a young man who had his father crewing from the Adams family. They had a summer um, as we went in, and when we got to the harbor, and then we had the this is a bigger boat, and when it began to sink, and nothing could be done at that point. Um, but within, I'd say, 15 minutes, got a phone call from Mr. Adams of the famous Adams family, calling up and apologizing. I mean, it was his son's era of not tacking when he should, um, and saying, okay, take it over to the boatyard, get it fixed. It's all our responsibility. And I just remember that because there's a member of the aristocracy taking complete responsibility for what happened. So, and it was a good lesson to see that's what one must do in certain situations, is to
Yeah.
take responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, beautiful. How exhilarating.
so
And Carol-
the boat got repaired and it went back to its racing.
Glory. Well, I do want to clarify that you are talking about not the creepy Adams family, but the John Adams family, and John Quincy Adams family of the line of presidents. Yeah. Deshane or Jade, whichever of you has got their hand up.
Yes, mahalo Cliff for sharing wonderful love with the ocean and your experiences. And I think one thing that I want to share is our ever gratitude for the ocean. I feel both me and Jade have been such a great appreciator of ocean, and it's because of the ocean how we are being a ocean invited us to Hawaii in some ways, and we have this energy that will always be very grateful for it, and we always take opportunity to align with the ocean. And I loved how Cliff said about attunement. For us, I feel it's a maybe 3 or 4 step process in our own head, which is intention, align, and harmonize. And what it means is every time we go out in the ocean, we may have an intention, and then we step into the ocean we first align with the ocean's breath. Before we align with our own breath, we align to the rhythm of the ocean, just to kind of get the sense. And naturally, once you get that attunement, or you align with the breath of the ocean, your energy and your breath will also automatically synchronize. And eventually, as we move through the ocean, you get a sense of what is ocean trying to teach you today. Where do you want to head out? In which direction you will want to go, sail or paddle for your intention. It might be to see a turtle, it might be to see a monk seal, or it might be just to be happy. And every time we step into the ocean, it teaches us a lesson about our own self. And because ocean always reflects your energy, whether you go strong or soft, it reflects back the same energy to you. And I'll share one personal experience from both sides. I had the privilege of going and paddling and going to the depth of the ocean in different parts of the world. I've done scuba diving, I've done also deep underwater experiences with many different animals, and also I've done paddling on the wave on the surface of the ocean. They both are completely different experiences. But one thing that is very common is how you align your breath, because as you go to the depth of the ocean, you have to be in a very strong self-control about your thoughts and your breath. Because if your breath starts out of control, you're going to panic inside the ocean. But the more calm and your breath is in alignment, you will be able to go to the very bottom of the ocean. And the ocean will reveal its beauty to you if that connection stays stable and strong. On the surface, it is other way around. You have the luxury to catch the waves and get your breath move in fast and strong, thrilling and those exciting emotions. Or you may choose to be on low moving surface oceans where you feel that peace and love as well. And one thing that I've came to observation is ocean is somewhere a bridge between the sun and the moon, because the sun is like the yang energy, which is giving. The moon is more of a receiving and reflecting energy, and water is somewhere in the between, which is the flowing energy. When the sun rises in the morning, you will see giant waves leaping out, expressing itself. But with the moon, the depth of the ocean, either it will increase up or it will flow down. So it kind of encompasses both the energy in some ways. So that's one small observation I wanted to share. Hello.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. Let's just keep going. Robert Moore.
Yeah. The breathing in the ocean, when the ocean gets stormy, lends you surprise, then it's hard to, then you really have to control your breath. And I was wondering, like I have a tremendous amount of respect for the ocean because it's tremendously powerful and you can't fight it. I don't know if you think you can, Cliff, but I've never known that you could win by fighting the ocean. You have to go with it. And you have to, like when it's stormy, and I'm wondering how you deal with that, you have to figure out ways to work with the energy of the ocean. So how does that work out with paddling?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Robert. And that's, yeah, you have to find a way to work with the ocean, or the ocean will expose your weaknesses and do you damage. And there's a lot of stories about that. And I thought of it when Deshane was speaking, I was thinking of this thing called, that I read in a book about being a mariner. It was called The Black Box. And He was using the black box as an analogy of when you go out on the ocean, um, if something like there's a problem with your boat, um, when you come back to land, you need to fix it. Um, and that's kind of like putting money in a savings account, putting money in the black box. And it's also what Deshane is saying is every time you go out in the ocean, you want it to be a learning experience. You want it when you come back, it's kind of like self-study. After you go out, you go, what did I learn from the ocean this time? It's the same way of putting things in the black box, because he says that those that get into these stormy conditions, these really bad conditions, and other mariners go, oh, that guy, that sailor, he's so lucky. The guy in this book was saying, no, he's not lucky. He just invested a lot in the black box, whereas the other guy didn't. And so things go awry, things go really bad, and they can go really, really bad, really, really fast in the ocean. But one thing I wanted to share, I mean, on a different note, just really quickly, is something that you reminded me of, Robert, that, all these things everything's so mysterious about the world we live in and in ourselves. And Robert told me this story once that he was out surfing at El Capitan Beach and he was just a little bit outside and a whale came up right next to him and stared eye to eye with him. Just one giant eye staring at Robert, full on eye contact. It was just this crazy, wild nature experience he had. And I just read this quote by Charles Darwin in a letter that he sent to a friend of his. And he says, whenever I think of the eye, I shudder. I just love that statement, that perception, seeing, is so mysterious. And something about paddling in big oceans that is, I find to be the case, is how you read the water. And this one book I read, they would not let when a person at the helm on these old sailing boats would go around the horn, around Terra del Fuego, they wouldn't want that person at the helm to look back because the waves were so huge. So they would literally build a physical wall so that that guy at the helm could not see the giant ocean behind him. They only wanted him to focus forward. And that's true when you're paddling in big seas. And sometimes, I've done it. I've crossed the channel in a one-man canoe when some of the waves are three-story waves. And sometimes you drop in on some of these waves, and I called them you would lean back to keep the rudder in the water, because if the rudder comes out of the water, you'll spin out. So I would lean back and lay flat on my canoe, and I called it a coffin drop. You're lying like in a coffin, trying to steer your canoe as you're screaming down this wave, and your rudder is making this vibrating singing sound. But that's the same thing when you're paddling a canoe, is everything behind you is kind of irrelevant. You're living in the present, but you're living in a future forward present. You're living in a present that is future forward. So you're reading the water, you're reading how it's developing, you see it coming out of your peripheral vision, and you're making these instantaneous decisions as to go left, go right, whatever. But everything really back there that can, if you turn around and look, it can be really, really scary, but it's not relevant. It's better to stay in the moment, but moment with the future, focused on the future a little bit with your eyes, Anyways, Elaine, I got going there. Your turn.
Yeah, well, thanks. It sounds like you're a pretty brave man. I don't know what you're doing out there in those conditions.
Yeah, me either at the time.
Elaine, let's hear from you.
Awesome. Mahalo for all of the wonderful observations. Just so much to take and think about as I go into the evening here. I had two thoughts come to me. One is how evocative on some level, some Jungian level, for all of us humans, the ocean is, because even in, now I live in a desert, and even in places where there is no large expanse of water, the language we use, I think it was Willa Cather and many people described the American prairies as an ocean of grasses. And I know people have just, I have a friend who's Australian and who's talked about the description of the Australian outback as an ocean of sand. And to me, it's interesting that the word itself becomes evocative of what you were talking about, Cliff, at the beginning of that connection we have with that which is greater than ourselves, because the ocean is so emblematic of that, as well as probably on some level that we can never understand, truly connected with that. So that was the first thing that's just been resonating for me through our conversations. And the second thing struck me is when I was in college, went to school in Boston, and my roommate rowed women's 8 crew. And rowing and paddling seems so different because structurally, I mean, they're structurally different. It's I never rowed, but I saw her often enough. The oar goes through an oar lock. And so every stroke is also mitigated by the shell itself because the oar is attached to the shell. And of course, the motions are very different. And so it just struck me how two things that on the um, at first glance would seem to be so similar can be so very different. And I'm thinking that quite possibly the experience of the water then is very different in those two ways of interacting with it. So just two things that struck me.
In addition to the fact that rowing, you go backwards, paddling, you go forward.
I had a skull over here, a one-man skull, and got to do that motion too, which I really enjoyed it a lot. With the one man, the seat moves back and forth as well. And when you're in a canoe, you're taking headings as to where to go. But when you're paddling backwards, like Renee is saying, you're following, you're doing a bearing reading. You're bearing off of some point behind you to go forward. There's a lot of difference, but there's also a lot of similarity too in terms of rhythm. I thought I'd just do a plug in terms of for a book that my daughter just turned me on to in regards to the Outback. It's a wonderful little book called Mutant Message from Down Under. And it's about this woman who ends up doing a walkabout with the Aborigines. And it's just amazing. One of the things that she noticed while she was doing this walkabout is they weren't talking very much. But then she realized they were. They just weren't speaking. That they were just, it was all telepathic. And their connection with nature was so tight. They sensed everything. It's something that we've lost in the Western world is our connection with nature. And so I think, the ocean is, and all forms of like the desert is such a mysterious place too. And I grew up in the desert in Tucson and spent a lot of time in the desert, you know, catching reptiles and finding pottery and all that stuff. But yeah, the world we live in is just mysterious. And it'd be nice if us people that have been trained to separate, man and nature found ways to reunite with nature as the Aborigines and so many older cultures, the Hawaiians and others have done.
Wonderful. I want to give a chance for folks who haven't spoken up to add in here if you'd like. We have a little time left. Sandra.
So, I'm actually in the desert now in Scottsdale. So I was born in Phoenix, so I didn't have a lot of water experience growing up. But when we lived in Atlanta, we lived on a lake, and my favorite thing, I had a paddle boat. So I wasn't paddling with my arms. I was like the Flintstones paddling my paddle boat, and that was mine. It didn't need gas. It didn't get broke. It didn't, we had other boats, but that was my boat. So I would take it out and just, drift and cruise and, face to face with nature, like herons and fish jumping and things like that. It was really, really fun. But my husband and I have been sailors for a long time. We have a sailboat on our lake, and then we bought a sailboat here in Hawaii about 20 years ago, and our sons lived on it. We visited, and so we've had many beautiful experiences just sailing and, coming across dolphins and whales and things like that. But for me also, it's just the idea of just sleeping on the water and waking up on a boat. It's, it's something that I guess we've been doing for like 40 years. So that really feels kind of like home to me. It feels very, because it's always moving. It's very subtle, but just being on a boat is very soothing. So being one with the sea on that level is very something that's meant a lot to me in my life.
So the ocean sort of as a cradle, at least the boat is a cradle on the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, very beautiful. Thank you. David?
Yeah, I grew up sailing mostly, and had the good fortune to sail from the Societies, Tuamotus, Marquesas, and then to Hawaii, basically the route that the Hawaiians traveled to get here. When I was 17, actually turned 18 just off the coast here. And yeah, that was 2 months of amazing experiences with 5 adults and myself. And recently got to go on the 4-man out of Kaimana Beach with Keikoa, paddling on the waves, catching waves in the 4-man. And what an exhilarating experience that is. And to be in tune with that massive wave, I mean, the amount of energy that's traveling across the ocean at quite a rate is really amazing. But I think my favorite experience in the water has always, and maybe always will, be body surfing. Grew up in Southern California, Huntington Beach. At maybe 12 years old, I got held underwater, thought I was going to die, somehow survived, and have been addicted ever since. But that sense of becoming one, I mean, I have great respect for surfers. I can't stand up on the thing. Just doesn't make any kind of sense. But being in the wave and becoming a part of it, it's transformational. To me, there's nothing quite like, and I love to just play in it. So as the wave is breaking and you're in the tube, you can kind of feel yourself spin inside the wave. It's there are no words.
David, as somebody who has studied psychology to the degree that you have, and I do see your hand, Deshane, I wanted to ask if you have any insight you could share as to why we so often hear about the ocean of consciousness, or consciousness compared to the ocean. Why is that? Why is that used as a metaphor? Like one time you talked about to go into meditation, to go beneath our thoughts. And I found myself doing that this morning, and had this experience of being in a vast ocean. What's that about?
I think there's probably a number of ways of looking at it, but the one that seems the most obvious to me, particularly for those of you who have scuba dived can attest to this, is you're on the surface of the water. This is consciousness. It's everything you can see, things that you're aware of. But the moment you go under, this is when you're tapping into what it is you don't normally see. So in your meditative state, you're going into the subconscious or the unconscious. And so I think there's a relationship there. But my first thought was, we're 78% water, and so is the surface of the planet. This relationship between the amount of water, and as you said, the salinity of our tears and our blood, same as in the ocean. We are from the ocean. We are of the ocean, part of the ocean. So I think, we say there's this sixth sense. I think the sixth sense can probably be divided into a whole bunch. I've heard the number of 32, that there are actually 32 different senses. And so when we have these experiences of, I have no idea how I knew that, but I was there at that right moment, I think that's a much deeper sense that is all what's beneath the surface. We're riding on the top of the ocean, but what's really the real ocean is what's underneath. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. Thank you. Shane. Jade.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee and Cliff and everyone for sharing. I just feel your attunement, your respect, your awe and love for the ocean. And it's so wonderful hearing all these different stories of connecting with the ocean. I also feel I am a student of the ocean, and I feel the ocean is a great teacher of mine and everyone, and also a friend. Whenever I'm in the ocean, I never feel afraid. I just feel that I can just learn from it. And what's the thing that connects us all? It's the ocean, it's the nature, it's the ocean of the prairie and the sand, like Elaine says. And I wanted to share a quick lesson that I learned from the ocean and the water is we were paddling out in Kauai, and we were paddling, and we paddled for about 40 minutes, and we landed, and we hiked through a forest for about another hour to go to this waterfall out in Kauai. And when we arrived at the waterfall, we're the only ones there, and it's completely quiet. It's just the sound of the waterfall. And I'm just standing in the water, under the waterfall. The Shane is doing qigong in the back. And I just stood there and I felt the wind. I felt wind just coming in full force from all directions and from up to down. And I look around and I was like, where is this wind coming from? There is rock all around me. I'm literally surrounded by a huge cave that goes all the way up, And I asked myself, where is this wind coming from? And from a deep observation inside, I start to chuckle because in that moment, I felt that the water and the nature taught me that water turns into wind. Water turns into mist. It's the same thing. The waterfall that was coming down, it was becoming the wind. And I just chuckled. And then we made our hour hike back to our paddle. And we're paddling back. And I see that the river, the waterfall has become the river, and the river is in full force. And then the next day, as I'm going out and just observing this mountain in the Nepali side, I look up and I see the clouds kissing the mountain tops. And again, I had this moment of chuckle inside. And I was like, oh, the clouds, they kiss the mountaintops and become the rivers. And then as we continued on, we went to the Hawaiian Nepali coast side, and we walk along the beach, and there's no one there. And then we spot a monk seal. And then we keep walking, and a gentle stream comes quietly just flowing down out into the sand and back into the ocean. And I was just in awe, and then it's a whole cycle. It just, water flows back into the ocean, becomes the cloud, becomes the river, becomes the waterfall, then back. And it's just such a beautiful lesson.
Cliff, yeah, I see we're at 4:03. I know you know that.
I just wanted to respond to Jade real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, that was beautiful, Jade. You have a wonderful way of helping us enter your experience, which it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And regarding the wind, when I go out paddling, I have my canoe on my wall here, and I'll go out in Kaneohe Bay and I'll paddle downwind, usually with the trades, and around an island called Coconut Island, and then back home into the wind. So I get to experience the wind a lot, and I've noticed that the wind is not the wind. The wind changes. It's strong and soft, strong and soft. And the more I've observed the wind, the more I really feel that it's a kind of breathing. It's nature breathing. It's not just this steady force. It really goes up and down. And I don't know that maybe we as human beings have somehow replicated wind through breathing, but I've always felt that there's nature. This is nature's way of breathing, is the wind. And I love that way that you described, that the water itself was creating the wind in that waterfall. Is beautiful.
Oh, it's quite beautiful. Well, next week we get to continue. Oh, and I'm going to tell you about next week, and then I'll ask somebody to get a vote of thanks to Cliff. So next week we're continuing our ideation upon nature with the topic of rain, translated into Hawaiian as ka'ua. And we'll have presenting for us our kumuhula, Malea Helela. So she will be presenting something to us on the rain, as she did earlier this year on the moon, Kamahina, from the tradition of hula. So that will be another Gems from the Movement Traditions session. This has been so wonderful. Is there somebody who would like to offer a vote of thanks to Cliff for heading us off into the winds of our conversation today?
Beautiful presentation, Cliff. Thank you so much. Thank you for your inspiration and your kindness and your generosity. Love that you're a part of this circle.
Yeah. And also for setting the example of really taking us through that movement form before we really dove into talking about it. Thanks.
Shane inspired me about that last week, I think.
I was going to say that you also help others find their purpose through your journey. People who have the strong determination, you are also helping them find their purpose. So mahalo for sharing that as well.
Yeah. Thank you all so very much. It's wonderful to sharing with each one of you. Aloha.
Aloha.